back to just some of the headlines over the past 10 years, you have many hundreds of people suing the government because they would like to be air traffic controllers, but they were turned away because of the color of their skin. That policy ends under Donald Trump's leadership because safety is the first priority of our aviation industry.
Y'all didn't catch that? Air traffic controllers, people who want to be an air traffic controller, they've sued. They've sued because of the color of their skin. Y'all need to see, y'all always got to pay attention. He didn't say gender. He didn't say sexuality. It was the color of their skin. Y'all know it ain't that many black and brown air traffic controllers, right? We're not done yet. Here is the former TV host, who's now the Secretary of Defense, Peter Hegseth. Listen to the racism in his statement.
We will have the best and brightest in every position possible. As you said in your inaugural, it is colorblind and merit-based. The best leaders possible, whether it's flying Black Hawks and flying airplanes, leading platoons, or in government. The era of DEI is gone at the Defense Department, and we need the best and brightest, whether it's in our air traffic control, or whether it's in our generals, or whether it's throughout government.
Y'all didn't catch that? Skin color. Black people. Latinos. He's talking about y'all too. Brown people. He's talking about Cambodians. He's talking about Asians. Native Americans. He's talking about everybody who ain't white. But white women, he really talking about y'all too.
All right, guys, so we got to continue our coverage of the mainstream liberal media meltdown over President Trump dismantling DEI at the federal level. Okay, the race hustlers, they are upset. They are boo-hoo, whining and crying, racism, bigotry. Okay, this is what they're saying. But out of the same side of their mouth, they will say that DEI mostly benefits white women, that black people don't benefit that much, right? So again, I'm trying to figure out exactly what's going on here, right? Are the race hustler tears over all of the white women that allegedly benefit from DEI and affirmative action the most? Or is there something else going on here, right? I'm not entirely sure. I am confused, okay? But anyways, these people, they're mad and they're upset because President Trump brought attention to the hiring practices of the FAA when it comes to air traffic controllers in the past, right? The discriminatory practices that resulted in a lawsuit against the federal government because they were excluding qualified candidates from becoming air traffic controllers due to them not being diverse enough, okay? And President Trump brought this to the attention of the public as a potential reason for why we have a shortage of air traffic controllers. And instead of the mainstream liberal media doing actual journalism and understanding why President Trump was making that point, they just default to boohoo, whine, and crown racism about it because they know that their audiences don't critically think enough to understand exactly what the president was talking about. So with that being said, I want to react to this clip from CNN, crown racism over President Trump dismantling DEI within the federal government. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Can I make a provocative argument here? What if Donald Trump also won because of the people who think that black people and trans people and women are taking things that belong to them? Isn't it possible that he actually won for that reason and that they don't think that this is a messaging, change of course, but this is the majority of those who voted. But they could very well think that this is the course that they are supposed to be on.
Yes, I think this is what economic anxiety has sometimes been euphemized to refer to, that people feel like they're losing their status in society and maybe their ability to climb up the socioeconomic ladder, and the easy scapegoat is the black and brown and people and women who are taking their place, who are robbing them of their opportunities. One thing I want to add to this discussion, besides the the career effects on people of color and women and other groups, other underrepresented groups in government, among other positions, who may suffer because of the comments that Trump made about DEI causing these plane crashes, is that Trump surrounds himself with lackeys who have historically been shown that they are motivated to sort of backfill and retrofit evidence to fit whatever his predetermined conclusion is. So if we want to prevent tragedies like this from happening again, I would not trust whatever investigation they put together, because Trump has already determined that the cause of this problem is DEI. If there is something else that's lurking here that could put people at risk again, we may not find out.
Well, first and foremost, President Trump has not determined that the cause of the crash is DEI. What President Trump was doing was that he was saying, well, listen, we have a shortage of air traffic controllers. And one of the reasons why is because of DEI efforts that exclude qualified candidates from becoming air traffic controllers based off their race. That is part of the reason why you have 1,000 plus of these people who were discriminated against suing the government. Again, that could have been an extra 1,000 air traffic controllers that we could have had that we don't have. He never stated that DEI was the sole and direct cause of that crash. He said that DEI could have played into the circumstances, right? The situation as a whole in regards to aviation, the near misses that we're having, a lot of problems that we're currently having. Yeah, DEI can play a role in that, and that is what they have to look into, right? Furthermore, notice what they're saying. They're saying, well, people didn't vote for Trump because of real economic anxiety, because they actually felt like they were struggling due to Joe Biden and the Democrats' inflation. No, that's not the reason why. No, they actually voted for Trump because they're racist, which is a hilarious argument, because President Trump was more successful with minority voters than any Republican in a long, long, long time, in decades. So again, it's just funny how President Trump's support increases among minority voters, but yet CNN is coming to the conclusion that he ran a racist campaign, that people voted for him because of racism and not economic anxiety. Again, it's just kind of funny how that works. I think everybody that voted for President Trump knew that Republicans and conservatives were against DEI. Okay, I mean, we had the conservative Supreme Court. They overturned affirmative action. So everybody knew what they were voting for. In fact, I think most reasonable people, even non-white people, were like, yeah, we don't think that DEI is necessary. We don't want the government to be a jobs program for mediocre people, right? The taxpayers have to pay for that. I don't want to pay for that. And when we're talking about federal safety jobs, like being an air traffic controller, yeah, that shouldn't be a social experiment. We should have the best and the brightest doing that job because it's that important, right? And I don't want to see all these efforts to diversify a crucial and important workforce that protects people's lives. You don't conduct social experiments and play games with the FAA or air traffic controllers or pilots. You don't do that, right? Again, because these people's jobs involve protecting people's lives, right? That's essentially what they have to do. That's their task, okay? So when you're talking about this type of stuff, I think most reasonable people are going to want the best and the brightest. I don't care if all the best pilots in the country are white. I don't care if all the best air traffic controllers in the country are black or whoever, right? Or whatever skin color. I don't care. As long as they're the best, okay? As long as they're the best. If they happen to be all white, so be it. So be it. You're saving lives. That's the point that these people sorely do not want to address.
You know, I actually do. I've talked to a lot of aviation experts this week. I have confidence in the NTSB. That is a gold standard agency in this country and honestly in the entire world of aviation. But I mean, to her point, you know, I think there are questions about whether this is going to be a witch hunt for the evidence to support this claim. They are going to be hunting down the people who fit the DEI narrative in order to prove, oh, he was right all along.
I think I'm alone in this group. I think I'm kind of afraid to be alone in this group. I surveyed these people. I focus grouped them. And they are really, really tired of being accused of either racism or sexism because they voted for Donald Trump. And it's one of the reasons why so many of them did. I sat on this stage with you and got chewed out when I suggest that there's a better language to reach out to voters, that the Harris campaign is missing what they're looking for. And I say the same thing here. Americans just want to be Americans, not hyphenated Americans, not female Americans, black Americans, Jewish Americans. They just want to be Americans.
How do you think it makes people feel, black people, women, any person who has immutable characteristics about themselves, to be told every time that something happens that because they exist in a particular role, it is their fault?
You know what's crazy about this question? You know what's so hilarious about these people boo-hooing and crying about Republicans now blaming everything on DEI? I don't think they're blaming everything on DEI, right? But these are the same people who, for the last, decade or so, more than that, really, have blamed everything that has went wrong in this country and in the individual lives of non-white people on white supremacy, right? Do you guys understand how this works? Do you guys understand what's happening? The same people who were totally fine with blaming everything in this country, everything that happens bad to a non-white person, a so-called person of color, was white supremacy. If a person of color is not successful in this country, well, it's because the white man, right? These are the same people. They blame everything on the white man, everything. Now they're upset because they perceive Republicans and President Trump as blaming everything that goes wrong on DEI, right? Again, it's amazing. It's amazing how that works. You'll never hear any of these people complain about blaming everything on people with immutable characteristics, right? When they're blaming the white man. But now when it's perceived as blaming people who are non-white, now all of a sudden they got a problem with it. It's just funny. The hypocrisy of these people is just stunning. The pendulum has swung the other way. They're getting a taste of their own medicine and they can't stand it. They can't stand it.
How does it make them feel?
How does it make people feel when they're told that they're a racist?
No. I mean, answer. But answer my question.
I am, because these are predetermined considerations.
But no. You're telling me I'm calling.
Do you want an answer?
Well, you're not answering my question. You're telling me.
Yes, I'm trying to.
You were telling me that
your response is in bad faith. I mean, what she is saying is something you're not responding to because it doesn't address why Donald Trump immediately went to DEI as an explanation without any evidence whatsoever for what looks to be an inexcusable and certainly a very devastating and tragic plane and helicopter crash a couple of days ago. And instead, you pivot to talk about how terrible it is that some people who voted for Donald Trump are being called racist and sexist. You're refusing to grapple with the central tension.
My understanding.
Frank, it's an option.
Hold on.
Frank, it's an
because
option
my
for
understanding
Trump.
is of the voter.
Frank,
that is what I do.
It is an option.
What about
for
the immorality and the incompetence
Frank,
of
it's an
blaming
option
DEI
for Donald
for what
Trump.
happened?
You guys can all jump on me. That's fine.
No. I'm not jumping on you. I'm trying to have a conversation with you. Okay, look, it is an option for Donald Trump to respect his voters and not scapegoat race in a situation like that. He chooses not to every time. Why?
He is saying, and I do not defend him, and I've not defended him on this program, because there are things that are more important than Republican and Democrat, and it's why some people lost primaries, and some people are not members of Congress anymore. I'm trying to tell you the truth.
Well, look, you don't have to listen.
not-
I just won my
Hold on,
primary, but you
Mondare,
don't have to lecture me.
Hold on,
Would you let me
Mondare. Let me let him
I
finish.
mean, if you're gonna throw shots, I'm just
Mondare, just a second. Let me let him finish.
This is why this show is such a challenge for me, because I really am, and I've been on this show and criticized him many times. I've been on this show and praised him. In the end, how do we get beyond how we look? How do we get beyond how we sound? Because in the end, we all have a right to a point of view, and I respect yours, regardless.
I just
what you-
don't respect the gaslighting and the bad faith conversation.
I
That's all.
also think you cannot talk about getting beyond all of those things, race, hyphens, whatever it is, when at the highest offices of the land, you have someone saying, because there is diversity, there is a lack of merit, there is a lack of quality, there is a lack of experience. That is a racist view, that people who have characteristics that they cannot change about them, that don't tell you anything about their intellect, about their experience, are by definition not experienced. Do you understand that?
Yeah, that is a complete and total straw man, right? Essentially what Abby Phillip is trying to do here is that she's trying to say that President Trump is, first of all, blaming race. Blaming DEI is not blaming race, okay? DEI is about these programs that are incentivized to make a workforce more diverse at the expense of competence and merit. That is what it's about. It's about the program. It's about the ideology. It's not about any one specific group of people. It's about the ideology in and of itself, right? But again, what really blows my mind about this is that these people don't see that this same line of argument that she's using, which is that you can't scapegoat people based off their race, okay, and immutable characteristics. You should not do that, which is not what Trump is doing, by the way, okay? Again, blaming DEI is not saying, oh, I'm blaming black people. No, it's about the ideology behind it. It's not the actual people, it's the ideology. But regardless, these are the same individuals that have no issues with telling white people that just because you're white, you're racist. Because in their minds, it's only acceptable to scapegoat a whole group of people by race, right? It's only acceptable to do that if they're white. But if they're not white, though, you can't do that. That's racism. But it's totally fine to blame, white society and white supremacy for everything that goes wrong in this country, right? For everything that happens. It's totally fine to prejudge white people even though you don't know them. But just because they're white, they're racist, okay? That is a commonly accepted worldview in these liberal circles that they have zero problems with. They don't push back against. But Abby Phillip is purposely being ignorant of the overall point because she doesn't want to engage with what Frank Luntz is saying here, which is that ultimately at the end of the day, calling people racist and sexist for simply not agreeing with something, you're never going to win people over with that. People are not going to agree with it. And ultimately, if you want to move past race, then you have to stop focusing on race unnecessarily. DEI unnecessarily focus on race when it comes to the workforce. And it's not necessary. And when you focus on race, what you're going to get is that you're going to get more racial tensions. You're going to get more chaos. You're not going to move forward as a society with this focus on race that an ideology like DEI calls for, especially when you're talking about who gets a job, right? Who's able to get into certain positions of power and who's not. It's a problem. It's an issue.
I do, because I listen to this. I hear this and I internalize it. And for those who feel like they're being marginalized, we have to do more. I agree with you.
It's not even just about being marginalized. It's just about recognizing
I just said I agree with you.
I know. I'm saying, but look, I'm not trying to use academic. I'm not trying to use academic language to talk about this. I'm just saying that there are people. Look, a couple days ago, there was a Harvard-educated Olympic track star was told that she wasn't qualified to have gone to Harvard, that she was basically a DEI admit to Harvard. I mean, that just from a human
Yes, that's
perspective.
wrong.
That is
we
wrong,
all agree
right?
that's wrong.
Can I ask you a question
we
about this?
all agree with that, but there's nothing I can say to you on this panel for any of you that's going to satisfy
No.
you.
May I ask you a question about
And
this?
that's the problem.
So you're saying Americans felt alienated by the way Democrats talked about
And
some of these things.
Yes.
Okay, but do you think that this is the antidote? I think that's the question here. I mean, you can be critical of terms that Democrats have used, but it's not clear to me how this approach is better. In fact, it seems exponentially worse to be scapegoating, whether it's hyphenated Americans or otherwise, any group of Americans for this tragedy, to be purging government data from websites under the guise of DEI and rooting out wokeness. I guess that's where I think there's a bit of a disconnect here. It's like,
well, again, you're not scapegoating a group of people. You are basically saying that there's a problem with a certain ideology, and a certain ideology leads to subpar results. Again, it's not about a group of people. It's about an ideology. Again, this is what these people refuse to acknowledge, and it's so annoying to me because this is not hard. This is not hard, but I think they do this on purpose.
I agree with you.
okay.
I agree with you. And you're probably surprised. That's the goal in all of this. How do we get to the point when we are judged by our merit, when you're judged by our performance? I've had two experiences. Number one is my house almost burned down in Brentwood. I wasn't even there to see it. And I want the best people possible to be on the front lines fighting that fire. I landed 55 minutes before this plane landed. I could have been on it. So I feel it. I hear this and I get it. And you're correct and you're correct. The question is, do we beat up on it and yell about it and complain? Or do we try to get a solution? Do we try to get beyond it? And the problem is, there's nothing I can say that's going to convince you.
Of course not. And this is why you should not have told them that they're correct, because they're not correct, right? Boo-hoo-wah and crying racism doesn't make you correct. The solution is to get rid of DEI. That's what President Trump is doing right now. And again, they're going to cry racism about it, and they're not going to engage in conversation about this in an intellectually honest way. So, I mean, I don't know. Frank Luntz, yeah, I think it is kind of pointless going on the show, right? Because they're not going to agree with you, because they want to keep the ideology due to the fact that they see not having DEI as a form of discrimination, even though DEI in and of itself is a form of discrimination, whether they want to admit it or not, it is. And if all of these DEI hires, if they're actually qualified, which is the argument from these people, then they should have no problems getting a job, right? They should have no problems keeping their jobs or getting another job that pays them a similar amount of money if they actually have real skills and if they are as qualified as these people claim that they are, right? I mean, everybody should want meritocracy. I think that there is fundamental disagreement in regards to how to get there, okay, and what that looks like. For them, for the race hustlers, meritocracy looks like racial discrimination against whites because they see whites as having a leg up over everybody else due to historical discrimination and racism. That's the way they see it. But what they don't understand, which is what the Supreme Court laid out when it came to their ruling overturning affirmative action, is that the remedy to past discrimination is not future discrimination. Future discrimination just creates more discrimination, and it's just a never-ending cycle, and you don't actually really solve the problem, which is discrimination in and of itself, right? You can't solve discrimination with more discrimination. You solve discrimination with no discrimination, right? You just stop discriminating, okay? And you let society fix itself, because that is what happens over time, okay? That's what happens over time. You let people compete amongst each other, then you're going to have the best of the best is going to rise, regardless of your skin color or your race. So in an ideal world, you don't want white people being held back because of their skin color, just like you don't want black people being held back because of their skin color. You don't want anybody being held back because of their skin color, period. Period. And the only way you can get there is through eliminating discrimination altogether. Meritocracy. That's it. But that's not what these people want. They don't want meritocracy. They don't want that. And that is why, you know, they're boo-hoo-whining and crying racism, and they're so upset about this, because ultimately, for them, they see meritocracy as a form of discrimination against so-called people of color, which tells you everything you need to know about their own self-confidence, right? And the ability of so-called people of color. Just saying. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.